Good morning, good day, and good evening. I am, as always, your host, Brody Robertson. This is episode 220 of Tech of a Tea, and today I found, maybe not found, you showed it from my Discord, an LFS user in the wild, and when I found out this, I had to drag them onto the show. So, Zeckma, welcome, how's it going?
It's going pretty well. How about you?
Yeah, not too bad, not too bad. I've been rebuilding my website today, so that's pretty much taken up a bit of time. I'm like using Hugo and all. Like before, I'd written in like plain HTML, which is not a good idea. Use a static site generator will make your
Oh
life a
yeah,
lot easier. But
that's that's always fun using plain HTML.
yeah, it means whenever I want to add a new page, I need to manually add in the header and footer. So don't do that. Just use a static site generator if you want to use HTML. It'll be much nicer. But we're not here to talk about
Yeah.
my website. We're here to talk about
Aw.
LFS, which is I don't know if you I don't know how long you've known about my channel for, like because I did do an LFS series like a while back, maybe like a couple of years back. I didn't finish it though.
Oh, trust me. Trust me, I watched all your streams by this point
Okay.
with LFS, but yeah, I've watched your content for probably about a year or maybe a little over a year
Mm-hmm.
by this point.
Mm-hmm. Oh, so you went back and watched the earlier ones then if you saw the LFS stuff because I think
Yeah,
it's been longer than that probably since I
it's
last
been
did
a
it.
while. I definitely watched back and then I noticed a lot of pitfalls that you went in and I'm like, holy crap, I went through these same pitfalls after the fact that I did my first installation. So I'm like,
Mm-hmm.
oh God.
Yeah, but I think the my favorite thing that I did completely wrong is this is why you make sure you always check your variables. Um, I did a chmod and also make sure you do it in a virtual machine because I did a chmod and I chmodded the root of my virtual machine, not the root of LFS. So that caused issues.
And and the thing about me and LFS
Mhm,
is I installed it about 10 plus times by this point. I
mhm,
completely lost count,
mhm.
but I've only did one installation in a virtual machine and I couldn't even get it to boot. So that was fun.
When
But it
you're
was
do
more reliable to actually get it to boot on actual hardware.
I assume you're doing on a hardware isn't on like a like when I say do it in a virtual machine, like I mean don't do it on like your production machine, right? If you're gonna do it on a hardware, that's fine, but don't do it on like your actual machine that you intend to use unless you are willing to completely kill it.
Well, you see, I'm literally running LFS on my gaming rig right now.
So I okay, I need to ask why. Why are you doing the LFS thing? Before we get into anything else, just why? What's wrong with anything else?
Well, most mostly the biggest reason is just because I love Linux and I think my affinity for Linux has gotten too far.
Right.
But another reason is just that it makes me feel yucky when there's software on my system that I haven't actually compiled besides, the NVIDIA driver and Steam.
Mhm,
But other than that, I want every system, not every system, but every software on my computer to be compiled by myself.
mhm. Wait, so you
Otherwise, I just feel yucky.
wait, so you're an Nvidia LFS user. So all of those people that complain about how
Yeah.
difficult it is to install Nvidia drivers on like a regular system and have them work fine, you're doing on
Oh, it's easy.
LFS.
It's easy on LFS.
Okay.
It's completely easy on LFS. There's no problem at all. Because with the NVIDIA driver, like many distros just ship a package and it has all the libraries, all the kernel driver that comes with it, and sometimes some actual utilities like NVIDIA settings. But on LFS, you just go to the NVIDIA site, you have a run file, you run it with Bash, and just follow the prompts, and bam, you just have it installed. Just like that. Very, very, very simple.
So you're not doing like any sort of package management then, or do you have like a script you use for stuff? Like what when you're installing applications, do
I
you have a system for it, or is it just you wing it basically?
I basically just follow the LFS and BLFS guides,
Hmm.
and I diverge a little bit because there's a lot of packages on Beyond Linux from scratch that just are on there, like Steam and Wine, for example.
Mm-mm.
But otherwise, I don't use a package manager. I just follow the guides.
Okay. One thing you did touch on before was you don't like the idea of not having software you've compiled. Is it specifically compiling the software, or is it not wanting to have additional software? Because obviously, something like Gentoo, you could also do that, but there are going to be additional packages there that you don't really care about that might get added. So is it specifically the So yeah, what's specifically about the LFS instead of something like Gentoo, for example?
Well, it is both because like for I'm just gonna point out Arch because I think it's completely stupid how Arch does it. It just pulls in random dependencies that aren't even required. And if you look on a lot of packages, it says it depends on system D, but in reality, it really doesn't. It's just the way Arch packages the software. It makes it so it depends on system D, and so it just pulls in a lot of dependencies that I don't need with Gentoo. It also pulls in some dependencies, but it's not as bad as Arch.
So it's a matter of just having complete control over what's going to be pulled in. You're only going to pull in the dependencies that actually are like hard dependencies, and obviously optional ones that you find useful. But if something doesn't have any place on your system, then you're just not going to bother adding it, and basically it stops there.
Yeah, or if I'm just completely lazy and I don't feel like compiling an extra package that day, which
Okay.
is sometimes a bad idea when you're compiling Firefox that has recommended dependencies, but you only have to install the required dependencies, but those recommended dependencies are for security.
Mm.
And if you don't use those recommended dependencies, then you'll have kind of a worse experience with Firefox overall because of worse security.
So, what sort of hardware are you running on your system? Like, what sort of compile time? Actually, here answer that question, but also like a rough sort of case for compiling, big applications like Firefox, the kernel, and then maybe some examples of smaller ones as well.
So I'm just gonna talk about my CPU. It just has 12 threads on it.
Okay.
It's 6 cores.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's 6 cores and then 12 threads.
Mm-hmm.
As for compilation times, Firefox takes about like 15 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
I noticed that GCC takes like 20 minutes, I think. So GCC ends up taking longer than Firefox to compile.
Mm-hmm.
Um, what was your other question again?
Like, how long does the Linux kernel take?
Um, it depends because the first compilation is of course the longest,
Right.
but if you recompile the kernel, I noticed that it doesn't take as long.
Mm-hmm.
Even if you upgrade, it still doesn't take as long as it did that very first time.
Okay.
So it really depends.
Mm-hmm.
I haven't compiled the kernel in a while, and I should get on that, but Yeah, it takes about 10 minutes.
Okay, okay. So
It's
if
not very long, but it doesn't take as long as Firefox.
right, right. So you mentioned like wanting to not have additional things that you just don't need. But how much are you actually running on your system? Do you keep a fairly clean system? Do you have a bunch of extra things that you've added over the time you've been using the system? Do you every so often clean things out? Like, because my system is a mess, to say the least. I have a lot of
Yeah.
things I've installed because when you have packages, it's very easy to install things and just forget about them. But I would imagine it's a lot easier to keep that in check when everything you add is an additional thing you have to worry about compiling when you want to upgrade.
Yeah, I think about it in terms of just what I need and what software I know I need to run or want to run. For example, like having Mupen 64 Plus on my system, I know I'm gonna want that because I love playing Nintendo 64 games legally. So um yeah, I just have that on my system plus everything else, but I don't really install extra packages except Surf because I wanted to give that a try, but installing the WebGTK package was an absolute nightmare and I never want to do that again, so now I just have those extra packages just laying on my system and I hate it. But I know that it's there and I know that I installed it. So I still have those packages in the back of my mind knowing, hey, I have these extra packages, but I don't need them.
Right. So the other part of that question was like how much do you think you really have installed on your system? If you were to look at it in the context of like a regular system's package management, like if you could estimate what that would look like, it might be hard depending on like the context of the system, but if you can possibly give a number on that, I guess I would give some context on like how much you really have installed.
Kind of like the package count that NeoFetch just dumps in its output.
Yeah, yeah.
Let's see, LFS might have like I think it's like maybe 80 or 90 packages. BLFS might be like 200 maybe
Okay, okay.
300. I guess we're gonna go in a ballpark of just having 400 packages on my system. I think that might be an accurate package count.
Well, obviously, most things are not going to be like Firefox, right? Like, most things you have are going to be things where they take maybe 5, 10 seconds, maybe a minute to compile at the worst. The projects like Firefox,
Yeah,
like the kernel, those are very few and far between.
yeah, you went through the LFS process, and a lot of the packages and the biggest chapter are just like configure, make, install.
Yeah, yeah.
Very simple instructions, very fast to compile, and it's just you just keep on doing that until you kind of hit the end or have some big road bumps with big packages. But otherwise, it's just very small packages that offer like wrappers for the C library or um, implementing protocols or stuff like that.
Yeah, yeah. Let's see.
And so you just have all these tiny packages, but you have like about, let's say, 30 big packages,
Yeah, you
but the
have the big
rest are
things
just
like
completely
systemd,
tiny.
for example, or whatever init system you end up using.
Yeah.
What init system are you using?
Um,
Because I know you mentioned Arch having systemd as a dependency, so I'm assuming that you don't use systemd then.
yeah, I use sysv in it,
Okay, okay. What made you go down that route?
and it says you
Oh, sorry, go on.
um just because it's like you know about sysv in it.
Mm.
Um, where was I going with that? Scratch that part
It's
where
all
I
good.
was
Sorry,
going. But
I redirected you a couple of times
the
there.
yeah the other part is the reason why I went with the sysv route is because it's just the other option with LFS. You just have system D and sysv in it,
Mhm.
and it's like, oh, sysv in it isn't system D, then let's just go with sysv in it. It's smaller. I don't have to deal with Ninja as much. I
Mhm.
can just compile sysv in it, be done with it, install boot scripts,
Mhm.
and be done with it.
Right. I do like that that was part of your
I
reasoning.
don't
It's not System
have
D.
to. It's not System D. I don't know. Like System D works fine.
Mhm.
It's just that sysv in it is lighter,
Mhm. That's fair.
and it gives more of a simplistic feeling to the system. Like you're back in the old days of Linux where you're just using very old software and only like the bare necessities to get stuff running,
Mhm.
and it booting off of a floppy disk.
Yeah, maybe booting
But
off a CD. Booting off a floppy disk might be a bit of a challenge with any. If you have a kernel, it's not going to fit on the floppy disk anymore.
hey, it's been done before,
Yeah,
but the end
before.
result isn't very flattering.
Yeah, yeah. Good luck with that with modern software. Yeah. Honestly,
I
fitting
could
things onto
try
a
with
CD now is hard
LFS, but it'd
enough.
be hard.
Sorry?
Yeah, yeah, I could try it with LFS, but it'd be pretty hard
Hmm.
because you have to strip literally everything
Yeah.
because you just have all this compilation software and extra packages that you just don't need.
Hmm. Yeah. I don't think it's worth your time. I think maybe focus on
No, it's not.
doing something. Well, I was gonna say do something productive, but you're already using LFS, so you're like,
Yeah,
yeah,
that chip is already sold.
yeah. Well, how long have you used LFS for?
The better part of a year.
Okay.
I thought it was actually over a year by this point, but it actually hasn't
Hmm.
because I didn't install LFS on my gaming rig. After their release when it came out, like right after, it was actually like a month or two afterwards.
Hmm.
And that's what surprised me, but yeah, it's only been a year by this point.
Okay. How long have you used Linux for then?
Um, let's see. I started in December of 2022,
Hold up!
so
Hold
about two
up!
years.
Hold up! You went you went from using Linux in 2022 to running LFS a year later.
Not to mention that I installed LFS plenty of times, starting in October of 2023. So it wasn't even like 8 or 9 months before I immediately went into the LFS rabbit hole, and it's been like like a few months afterwards. Then I started daily driving LFS. But I've been big in LFS like even before I daily drived it.
If you could see my face right now.
And I
Okay.
could literally tell you the pipeline that I went for. It's like
Please
you,
do.
you know Garuda,
Yes.
and it has like a dragonized version, but it also has a bare bones version, which is basically just Arch with Garuda software on it.
Yes.
So I started with Garuda, the dragonized version,
Hmm.
for 2 weeks, immediately jumped sell to the bare bones version,
Hmm.
and then I went on that for like 3 weeks. Then I immediately did an Arch install
Uh-huh.
and just daily drived Arch for um probably as long. until I actually started daily driving LFS. But then I went down the Gen 2 and LFS rabbit holes in about like September or October.
Right.
So
Right.
about 7 to 9 months after I switched from Garuda over to Arch.
Uh-huh.
And I've been daily driving LFS for a year now. And I
Right.
have no plans on switching, by the way.
I don't know where you would go if you switched. What, you go to Ubuntu next? Like I
Tempo OS.
That's true.
I'll just create a new operating system.
Just yeah, get your your Nvidia card might be a problem. Just start reverse engineering the drivers. Run Temple OS driver.
Uh, I'll become Terry A. Davis, but without all the slurs.
So, how did you make your way onto Linux? Like when yeah, how because most people when they start using Linux, right? Let me. It might be difficult for you because you became an LFS user within a year, but most people will like mess around with Ubuntu and Fedora. One day they might get their way to like Arch and Gentoo. Like that's a normal like way that this goes. So, how did you find yourself onto Linux? Like what originally drew you to it?
So, I was actually a big Windows power user before I
Okay,
switched to Linux, and you wouldn't even believe it, but I was like a big Windows power user. I
I'm not
remember being
surprised.
in high school, and I was legit pretentious in high school, being like, "Oh, when are you gonna install Windows 11?" Because I was in the insiders, uh, um, whatever program that Microsoft does.
Mhm,
And I was like, "Oh, when are you gonna install Windows 11?" And I was like big into it and was running Windows 11
mhm.
until I noticed that the CPU, it was like a i3 because I was using a crappy laptop at the time,
Right.
but it was being throttled while I was just playing a basic 2D game called Geometry Dash. And so I was dying because of lag spikes. And I'm like, I can't play GD with all these lag spikes. I need a downgrade because Windows 11 is the issue. And when I downgraded, it immediately solved the problem. And so I'm like, Windows 11 might actually be bad for performance. And so I continued being a Windows power user until Microsoft started pushing all the ads.
Mm.
You know all about them and
Oh, well aware,
stuff like
yes.
that, and trying to push users to install Windows 11.
Mhm,
And I'm like, this is a problem.
mhm.
And so I had a friend who said, "Hey, there's this thing called Linux, and you should give it a try at least."
Mhm.
And so I asked him, "Well, what distros?" And he said, "Oh, you can do Mint. You can also do Garuda. Garuda's pretty nice." And so I'm like, "You know what? Let's go with Garuda."
Mhm.
And so I just went with Garuda, then went down the rabbit hole
Hmm.
because I just wanted to avoid having to switch to Microsoft Windows 11.
That's a fair argument. I can respect that. I kind of felt I didn't start using Windows sorry Linux because of 11, but I didn't like 10 anyway. So it was a matter of time. I actually was a Mac OS user for a very long time. I only started using Windows again because there was some like specific Windows software I needed for like my university class, and yeah, and somehow I went from that to using Linux and going from needing software for a specific class to intentionally going out of my way to find software that could do the same thing as what I needed in the class. So, I'm sure I probably could have stayed on
I
macOS, but the hardware at that point was getting old, and I really didn't want to buy a new MacBook. That's the thing. Like that's honestly one of the big
yeah.
reasons. I did not have the money to buy a new MacBook.
Yeah, I can't even relate to having even just a basic computer for a long time because the way because my parents just didn't want to get a computer for me,
Mhm.
and I just had to rely on like really crappy hardware
Mhm.
and just have like a Kindle Fire, then upgrade to a phone when I was 13, which fair enough, but a
Mhm.
lot of kids just have like a computer growing up and I just didn't have that privilege, and
Mhm.
so I just got a computer in 2020.
Mhm.
And so I literally only had computer hardware for 4 years now,
Mhm. Mhm.
which is absolutely insane to me.
And as soon as you got it, you got like very into messing with it. Like, did you
Very into it.
did you have an interest in it like back when you had like very limited access to hardware, or like what sort of spurred your interest there?
Oh, I always wanted to get a computer just because, all the YouTubers have, computers and stuff and can run all this software that you can't, you just, a phone or hell, a Kindle Fire.
Mhm.
And so you just, like, for example, like Steam games like Gmod, for example, I always wanted to play that, but
Mhm.
I just couldn't until I got a computer.
Mhm.
And so that's what drew me in is just all the software that I can run and how I could just edit videos
Mhm.
much better, create art better, literally do everything I was doing but better,
Mhm.
you know?
Yeah, that's understandable. I get that.
Because I was editing on my phone using KineMaster and it was the most unbearable experience you can imagine. It was terrible. I do not recommend it.
Yeah, I don't get the whole phone video editor thing. Like there are
It
people that
it
are really good
saved
at
me
it,
in a
but
pinch.
yeah.
It's very clumsy.
Mm.
It is very clumsy, and the processing power of a phone is just it's terrible.
Well, I'm sure if you had like a high-end phone, it would be different, but if you're using commodity hardware, like yeah, it's not going to be a good
If
experience.
you're using high end like phone hardware, you might as well just get a computer.
That's true. That's, but I don't
Like
know.
you can just get like $100. You can just get like $100 phone,
Mhm.
and then get like a $400 like laptop or something.
Mhm.
Instead of spending $1,000 on an iPhone and not be able to run as much software as you could on that $400 laptop.
That's true. Yeah, that's true. Um, so you mentioned that you're a Windows power user. So like, what were you doing on Windows?
I was actually like developing Windows software and I was messing around with learning DirectX
Okay.
and how to
Okay.
create windows and create message boxes. I was dealing with C++, which God, I don't want to remember my memories of. That was terrible. And let's see. I I wasn't messing with the command line at all because when you're a Windows user, you don't want to mess with the command line at all. That's just a worse way to do things. You just
Mhm.
have all this GUI software that you can run.
Mhm.
On Linux though, it's completely the opposite where command line runs keen, but the GUI just is slower and sometimes even a worse experience.
Mhm.
But let's see what else on Windows. Yeah, I was just messing with a lot of the software and creating my own software
Mhm.
and just really learning the ins and outs of Windows, but I never touched the registry editor
Mhm. So it was
because who would?
usually if you're gonna touch registry edit, it's because there's a specific setting that you want to disable that you found on some forum somewhere. Besides that, like I'd rather not mess with it. I'm sure I'm gonna break something.
Yeah, 100%.
And from there, you made your way onto Linux. Do you still like do development stuff on Linux, or is it just keeping this LFS system alive?
Keeping the LFS system alive is a good way to put it, but yeah, I switched from C++ to C,
Okay.
and I made my own game engine in C.
Okay.
And I also have MinGW W64 builds
Mhm.
because in order to compile Wine, it depends on MinGW W64 to compile DLL files. But in order to compile MinGW W64, you need MinGW W64. So you kind of have to have like an already built software toolchain to compile another toolchain to compile Wine.
Right. Right.
And so I also supply MNG WW64 builds. And otherwise, I just kind of make my own scripts that are just like, give more life to my system.
Mhm.
Like FFmpeg scripts.
You did mention the FFmpeg stuff before, so I've joked about like recording videos and streaming with FFmpeg because you can do it. Like FFmpeg is incredibly powerful, and
You
most people
can.
don't understand like what it can do. But you actually record stuff with
A lot of
FFmpeg.
a lot of software like video editors on Linux depend on FFmpeg to actually generate the final render.
Yep. Yep.
And so, if you can do that, then why not use it to record? I mean, OBS does depend on FFmpeg,
Hmm.
or at least the libraries that FFmpeg supplies.
Hmm.
And so, it's like, if OBS can do it, why not just go straight to the source? And so, you just use FFmpeg to record everything and sometimes stream and take screenshots. It's entirely possible, but it's also a headache to set up.
Right. Well, I'm sure like once you've got it set up, you're not going to be running you're not going to type the command out every time. You just have like a script for it, or an alias for it, just to like get something done in the next hour. Uh, but it's getting
Yeah,
that
with
first stage
DWM.
done. Hmm?
Yeah, with DWM, I just have custom keybinds, and those custom keybinds just launch scripts
Hmm.
that actually contain FFmpeg commands. And so that's just what I do.
So if
I
you're,
just use keybinds, and if I wanted to monitor output,
Mhm.
then I just go into a terminal and type in the script name
Mhm.
and just do it that way.
Mhm. So if you're doing like a screen recording of like with FFmpeg, like what does that command actually look like? Like how big is that command?
Messy.
Actually,
That's what it looks like.
if you can find the script, can you just like dump like the script into Discord?
Oh yeah, totally. Let's do that. Let's see. Cat- yeah, we can just do the.
Is
I'm just gonna dump the ASCII text in
okay,
the
that's
script
fine.
file. I
Yeah,
think
that
that's
works.
gonna work better. But generally, this is what it looks like right here.
Jesus Christ. Okay.
Yeah. Some of it is setting up audio, some of it is setting up the frame rate, some of it is dealing with CUDA nonsense,
Mhm.
and the rest of it is just formatting,
Okay, so for anyone
like
just
audio and crap like that.
right. So for anyone just listening, first line is setting up the file name. The second line is the output directory. Uh, Then I don't even know how to explain it. So there's setting CUDA in here, setting the frame
I
rate, screen grab the resolution, linking pulse, linking the microphone. I don't even know what half the rest of this does.
So I can explain it. Do you want me to explain it?
If you want to, sure, go ahead. We can work our way through this.
Okay. So you were right about the first part using um so setting up CUDA as the hardware acceleration,
Mhm.
setting up the frame rate, then setting up X11 grab
Mhm.
as the basically taking the X11 output and taking it as an input to
Right,
basically
right.
record, setting the resolution. The thread queue size is absolutely stupid. I still don't know what it does, but if you set it, then it stops an FFmpeg warning.
Okay, sure.
Then you just have pulse outputs or inputs
Mm-hmm.
like the microphone and the stereo,
Ah, okay, yep, yep, I
and
see.
then you the filter complex and AMX inputs
Mm-hmm.
is just to combine those two pulse audio inputs
Mm-hmm.
and merge it into basically one, like concatenating them.
Right.
Then you'll have making sure that the format is H.264, still using CUDA and the NVIDIA encoder.
Mm-hmm.
And then the rest is just weird
Yeah,
stuff that makes it work.
CRF is setting the
And then
quality, and then pix format, that's the pixel format.
it's yeah, and then the G is just saying the final frame rate.
I
And
see.
then finally the output file.
This is ridiculous.
I also use FFmpeg to take screenshots and stream. Streaming is an absolute nightmare with FFmpeg.
What is
It
this?
doesn't work half the time.
Yeah, what does the streaming one look like? Because I've seen people try to stream with FFmpeg, and it usually doesn't go too well. Technically, it's a
So the
stream.
thing is, it works for the first 5 minutes until it just crashes, and I'm still trying to figure out why it's doing it.
I see. I see.
So I'll just do this. I made sure that the script doesn't have any sensitive information on it,
Oh yeah,
and
make
the
sure you don't
sensitive
put
information
just
is
stream
is
key. Yeah.
dependent on like is a file in Etsy
Mhm. Yeah.
just because of the stream key.
Yeah.
So with this script, it's just a variable.
Okay. Yeah. Here we go. Okay, so a lot of this is similar. So frame rate, X11 grab, resolution, thread queue size. Where's the new stuff? The bit rate.
So the new stuff is basically just saying bit rates, dealing with the actual audio format.
Mm-hmm.
Otherwise, if you don't set up the audio format, is then you can't stream to YouTube. It just fails. With Twitch, you could probably not set it up, but it probably will still fail because probably the way of how RTMP handles things.
Mm.
But
This is nonsense.
screenshots are actually a lot more simple because you don't have to depend on audio. It's just
I would
grab
imagine.
one frame of the X11 grab,
Mm.
input, and output a single frame as a PNG file.
Mm-hmm. Why? Why FFmpeg?
That's a good question. I hate myself.
Fair, fair. 'Cause there are very lightweight tools you could
Basically,
use that could take screenshots and like to record video.
so basically the way this started
Mm-hmm.
is I wanted to compile OBS.
Sure.
The problem is that OBS switched over to Qt6 and doesn't allow Qt5 builds anymore.
Mm.
And so I tried to compile Qt6. It failed because FFmpeg nonsense with libav, or whatever it was, and
Mhm.
so I just couldn't compile QT6. It would just fail,
Mhm.
and I couldn't diagnose the issue at all because I compiled FFmpeg normally, so I didn't know what was the issue, so I couldn't compile OBS.
Mhm.
And so I was like, you know what? OBS uses FFmpeg. Why not just use FFmpeg?
Mhm.
And so that's why I now use it. But with a new fresh installation,
Mhm.
I managed to compile Qt6.
I
But
see.
it's like, why would I want to depend on OBS and set up all this stuff when I already have the scripts on my system?
I see. I see. So now it's just it.
That's what you see here.
So now it's just it works. So why change it?
Exactly, yeah. It works
Right.
perfectly just fine, so it's just like,
Except the crashing when you try to
why
stream.
switch over? I still want to fix it and figure out what the issue is.
Hmm.
I just haven't yet.
Hmm. I don't have an answer for you. I don't know what I'm looking at.
I don't. Yeah, I don't know the answer either. I tried messing with the script a few times,
Hmm.
but it just ended up the same. So I'm just like, we'll figure it out later.
Right. So you're on. Obviously, you're on X11. Um, you mentioned DWM, so that's what you're running right now.
Yeah.
What made you do DWM? Was it just because it was light, or why not like i3 or anything else like that?
I see what this conversation is going into. You're gonna try and shill Wayland for the a millionth time.
No, FFmpeg's clearly not going to work capturing this. So, I haven't done DWM myself. I'm just curious why that one over something like i3, awesome, BSPWM, Qtile. I don't know anything else.
Well, it makes sense when you take a look at my history because I mentioned I like compiling software and I develop in C.
Hmm.
And so it only makes sense that I would gravitate towards DWM
Hmm.
because it's simple, I get to manage with the C code, I get to compile it myself,
Hmm.
and it's a small project. I know what's getting installed by it, like almost to every single file.
Hmm.
And so it's just natural that I like the flexibility of it and how simple it is.
Hmm.
I managed to strip out parts of DWM that I just don't need, like floating tiles.
That's okay. So you just
And so
remove the floating system
I
entirely.
just, yeah, because it's a nightmare to deal with
Hmm.
because I don't know what causes it, but sometimes DWM just makes it so the window only takes up the top left screen estate even when all of the estate is entirely free.
Yeah,
And so I don't
awesome
know
has the exact same
why it did
problem.
it. And so
Awesome
the way I
never
fixed
fixed
it is
that.
just
Yeah.
by and so the way that I fixed it is just remove the tiling system entirely
Remove the floating system?
because then
Or do
it
you mean,
never
or
yeah,
you said,
the floating
yeah,
system,
yeah,
yeah.
okay. Because you said remove the tiling system.
Not tiling system, the floating system,
Right,
yeah.
right, okay, okay. I was confused for a
Because
second there.
because some application, I don't know what it is.
Hmm.
It just makes it so DWOM switches to the floating system,
Hmm.
and it makes no sense why. It
Right,
just does it.
right, right. Do you
And
have?
so if
Oh,
you
go on.
remove it, then it doesn't need it.
Hmm. That makes sense. Do you have like a bunch of DWM patches installed, or are you one of those people who like to run it fairly clean?
I do have patches, yeah.
Hmm. What?
I forgot which ones I
Okay.
actually applied though.
Okay.
I just know one of the main ones was the window gaps
Ah, yes, very important.
because the part of my arch rising self hasn't left my LFS self. You know,
God, there's.
some of it stays.
Always forget how many DWM patches there are. Cats. Yeah.
There's a ton, but a lot of them I just don't need.
Yeah, there's like five
And
different
plus
versions of
patching,
gaps.
yeah. Plus after you patch once,
Mhm.
then patching yourself is an absolute nightmare
Yep.
because the diffs are completely off.
Yeah, I have a ST build that was interesting to get working the first time, and now I don't touch it.
Oh my god, don't mention ST and patches. That was a nightmare.
D menu was also well, D menu is a lot simpler,
It
but even D menu was a problem.
I remember spending a good hour or two trying to patch ST, and I finally got it to a usable state, and now I use ST, but it took about 2 hours just to patch it because all the diffs were off.
Yep. Yep. I
Because,
yeah.
yeah,
You have to know what the code does. If
I don't use, yeah,
you're saying I don't use what was that?
I don't. I don't use D menu though. I use Rofi.
Oh. Oh, okay. Is just because you just like it
did
more,
I
or
did I upset you?
no? I use a completely different program now called Toffee, which works much nicer on Wayland. Um, Dmenu,
Oh, I see.
it's
I
basically
use
a clone of
I,
it's a clone of Dmenu, but it has a Brothy name. Don't ask why.
yeah, I just use Rofi because I just like how it goes in the middle and I can just type it. I don't like having a bar
Mhm.
at all. I actually really hate bars because it takes up screen estate for no good reason. Because I don't need to immediately know the time or battery usage
Oh,
or
so
RAM
you don't have a
usage.
bar
If I was
whatsoever?
interested, I just no. If I wanted to know any information, I just open a new terminal and go to whatever application that tells me what the information I need is. And so I just have 100% screen estate.
So when you check the time, do you just run the time command? Or whatever, what is it called? What's
Oh,
the command to check the
some it's date,
date? Sorry, not
but
time.
if I check the time, sometimes I literally just go into my Discord tab and check what the latest message I sent was, or I send a new message.
You send an
Uh, But if yeah,
uh-huh. I feel like there are
or I just like
simpler
check my
ways to
phone because
achieve
it's literally
this.
right next to me. Well, yeah, I do have a phone right next to me, so I can
Right.
just power it on, check the time, and then turn it back off, and then, you know, it isn't as big of a waste of time as you think it is, and I think it's just better than having a bar that literally just says the time.
Have you considered buying a clock? Just put it on your wall.
That's a good point. No.
No.
Clocks are bloat.
That's true. That's true. I'm not surprised you don't use a bar, but it does amuse me. So, you just have a
Like, I get
go on.
I get why people
Mhm.
I get why people have a bar and why they depend on it.
Mhm.
Because like you will want to know the time, you will want to know your battery usage,
Sure.
what apps are. Like for example, you have OBS, having the recording indication.
Mm-mm.
Like you want to know that stuff, but personally, I don't need it,
Mm-hmm.
and so why have it?
Why have it? Why have it indeed? Yeah. Do you have a wallpaper?
Oh, I do.
Okay. Okay, we just had to check. Just had to make sure.
No, I don't. I don't have a fa command in my X and RC.
Hmm.
What are you talking about? I don't use fa. It's bloat.
I wouldn't look if you told me you just had a black screen unless you open an application. At this point, it wouldn't surprise me. Again, it would not surprise me.
In fact, using the compositor is bloat. Just use the window manager.
That's true. That's true. So
Who
what?
needs
Uh,
PyCom?
yeah, I actually didn't have PyCom. I didn't have PyCom installed towards the end of using X11. I was having. I don't even remember why I got rid of it actually. I think I was having like there was like weird capture issues, and I just was like get rid of it. Bye. I don't care. Um, but as like a general rundown, like what software do you run? So you've already mentioned DWM, you've mentioned ST, and you mentioned Firefox. Those are obviously like some big applications, but what else do you have on your system? You mentioned Discord and Steam as well, obviously. But any other notable things that
Um,
people might want to know about?
I run Discord in the browser. I
Oh,
am
that makes
literally
sense.
just
Yeah.
using. I'm literally doing this call in the Discord browser, but not the Discord browser, but
You
the
browse
browser
Discord. Yeah, yeah,
version in Firefox.
yeah. Hmm.
Um, I also use Wine and I use Steam.
Sure. Yeah, those sort of go hand in hand.
Um, in the past, in the past, I actually used Steam Proton to launch my Windows applications
Hmm.
because why would I install another application
Hmm.
to run Windows applications if Proton works just fine? But um, I really love teaching people and to show, hey, if you need this application, here's how to install it.
Hmm.
That's what I like doing. And so I needed to figure out a way to install Wine in order to teach how to do it.
Hmm.
And so I had to install it. And so I went through that rabbit hole and I figured out a good way to do it. But yeah, now I have Wine and Steam on my system.
Hmm.
What else is notable? I also mentioned Mupen 64 Plus. I haven't installed a DS emulator yet,
Hmm.
but on my previous installation I had Desmumi.
Hmm. Hmm.
I have Citra. I have Dolphin. The emulator, not the file manager. I just use the terminal.
Hmm. Do you use a terminal file manager or just
Um,
terminal commands?
just terminal commands. I just use ls and grep.
Or do you don't have any file manager installed? You just use like ls grep cd
I
cp rm.
yeah yeah just those, yeah. I used to have Ranger,
Uh-huh.
and Ranger worked pretty well, but eventually I just stopped using Ranger and just used terminal commands even when I had Ranger on my system.
This is another
And
why
so I just
situation.
gravitated away.
This is a very important why situation.
I,
Again, what is normal to you might not be normal to other people.
so I don't know, it's just instinctive habits, I guess, of
Hmm.
just using simple terminal commands to do basic things.
Hmm.
Because when you follow LFS, you just use these basic old commands to just do everything.
Hmm.
And there's just it's simple.
Hmm.
And so when I don't know. It's just doing very simple things to do very simple things.
Right, right. Okay, okay. Um, what do you use as a text editor?
Vim.
Okay.
I I I th- I did use NeoVim,
Mhm,
but I just have a few issues with NeoVim.
mhm.
Like the default out of the box, I don't really like, and the plugins I found it really difficult to set up. Found it a hassle, and it's just like, why install all these plugins and stuff when Vim out of the box is just good enough for me?
Sure. Do you use Vim as a
And
programming
so I just
environment, or do you use something else?
I don't really have a programming environment. I just whenever I need to edit a C file, I just use Vim, and then I'll probably have some other terminals open up.
Uh-huh.
For example, like one terminal in the root directory of the project, and I can just do like cmake make to test results.
Mhm.
Then do like a clean of that directory, then commit and push.
Mhm. So
But
you mentioned before working on a game engine. Did you write that with Vim without like using any like language plugins?
correct, it's just Vim, C, and make at the time, but I made it so that it depends on CMake now
Right,
instead of
right.
using a make file.
So, what?
But yeah, it was just basic Vim and
Uh-huh.
C.
So, no like, nice language auto completion stuff, just straight write everything by hand.
Yep.
Okay. Do you at least use syntax highlighting?
Well, yeah, because it's well, the way the configuration file is set up by LFS, it's
Mhm.
just good enough for me because they have their when you set up Vim, then it has like, oh, configuring Vim,
Mhm.
do a Vim RC. But beyond that, it just kind of out of the box has syntax highlighting, and that's it.
Okay. All right. So, so you're a fascinating person. I'm learning a lot today. So you run DWM and ST, you program in a 90s programming environment, and you also play Steam games with NVIDIA GPU. You're a very fascinating person.
Correct.
Look. I'm not trying to sound mean here. This is very interesting to me. Um,
No, 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 it's okay. I don't recommend this setup upon anyone.
okay.
I literally know how insane it's. I literally know how insane it sounds,
Mhm.
but the thing is, it just works for me, and that's the reason why I do it.
Mhm.
But if anyone asks, "Hey, what do you use?" I'm like, I don't recommend this upon anyone.
Mhm.
This is not a good fate. Don't get in this rabbit hole.
Right.
Save yourself.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. At least you're self-aware. Okay.
I
So
am self-aware.
so one thing I did want to ask is, what's it like just being in a situation where you've got a system that's completely set up by yourself? Because most people, if they have a problem, there is like a place they can go to for support. They can go to their distro or either their distro or like resources surrounding their distro. But basically, what you've got is LFS, BLFS, and then from there, you're basically on your own. Besides like material that exists for the specific software.
Yeah, so there was the XE situation,
Hmm.
and the thing with LFS and BLFS is they have mailing lists,
Okay.
and they can discuss vulnerabilities
Hmm.
to the audience that does use LFS and BLFS.
Hmm.
And so they just said, hey, there's a vulnerability. We recommend downgrading to this version.
Hmm.
And whenever there's a vulnerability, you can just compile the old version yourself, and sometimes there's no issues. Other times there are going to be issues because of ABI stuff,
Hmm.
and that's a common issue that happens with glibc, and that's why I hate glibc, because if the ABI changes in glibc, if you want to upgrade, you have to recompile your entire system,
Hmm. When you're doing
which is
that,
not fun to do.
yeah, I wouldn't expect so. When you're doing that, what I use Arch, right? Like if I have a problem like this, I just upgrade packages. But I assume you have to like do things in a specific order to make sure you don't just completely brick your system.
Um, it really depends,
Hmm.
because when an upgrade happens with a certain package or a downgrade, the thing you really only have to worry about is how the libraries interact with other libraries, and if the API remains the same,
Hmm.
just downgrade or upgrade your package, be done with it. But if there's an API change, then you have to figure out the entire dependency tree and go from the bottom of the dependency tree upwards.
Well, I mean, in cases like
So you
glibc,
have,
obviously different applications, very much like it's gonna be a different case. But like when you have an issue where you need to mess with glibc, like that, I would imagine could cause some serious problems.
yeah, the LFS team basically recommends that you just recompile, which means you just start at stage 0, like square, basically just go ahead and do LFS and BLFS again.
Oh, oh, okay.
That's what I mean by recompilation of LFS, is by literally just following LFS and BLFS again, because if you try to upgrade those all those packages,
Hmm.
it's probably not going to work at the end of the day. You're just going to brick stuff.
Hmm.
So just recompile again with the newer glibc version.
Hmm.
However, the API nowadays doesn't really change
Hmm.
that much. And so what you can end up doing is just apply a bunch of patches and be completely fine. You can just upgrade.
Hmm.
But it really depends, and you have to research before you actually upgrade. Otherwise, you can end up breaking your system.
So, what sort of update cycle do you have for your system? I know you mentioned you hadn't upgraded your kernel in a while, but how often do you generally upgrade things?
Only when I really need to, because a lot of packages just don't need updating at all.
Hmm.
And so you can end up having most of your packages just be like over a year old, and you'll be just fine.
Hmm.
And so it's only like really important ones like OpenSSL, the graphics driver, um, sometimes curl, and just anything involving the internet.
Yeah, like so your browser, things like that.
Yeah, besides that, you don't really need to upgrade at all. You can just stay on old software and be just fine because you're on a source-based distro.
Hmm.
If you're on a binary distro, then you basically have to upgrade everything because those libraries depend on those libraries' compile time.
Hmm. So, okay. So the answer is there isn't much of an update cycle. It's just what desperately needs to be upgraded gets upgraded, but other things kind of
Or
just
just not
sit there.
important.
Yeah. Have
Yeah.
you have you ever
That's why
okay, on.
that's why whenever people mention maintainability of LFS, I'm just like, what maintainability? There's a little maintainability to be done. You just run your system for the most part.
So, where is it? I know in BLFS, isn't there a section on
I think it's like called package management.
yeah, there is a section on package management. Some whatever it's called. Um what's
Um, I literally have a tab open just because I've been making a book. But let's see
Cuz I was
here.
going to ask like have you considered actually using a package manager? I know that you said you like having things from source, so I'm going to assume the answer is probably no, but it's definitely an
It's
option there.
just yeah, and I know that's what a lot of people do. I
Mhm.
know there's one member in your server that has a package manager, and by all means, that's a perfectly fine way to do things. But I just like going for it, just doing what I need and not have to worry about a package manager.
Well, yeah,
Just because I couldn't really benefit from one
if you're installing a package manager,
with the way I'm
really
doing things.
you're just turning your system into like a whole nother thing. Then, like if you're installing Pac-Man, for example, and you're pulling in from the Arch repos, just install Arch. Like you've you've just got a more broken version of Arch. Then,
Yeah, you know a mental outlaw, right?
yeah, yeah,
Yeah, he covered like installing a separate package manager on Gen 2, like installing Pac-Man on Gen 2, and it's like he covered why that's a really bad idea because the Pac-Man manager is just gonna it's just gonna pull in all the dependencies it thinks it needs despite what you already have on your system.
hmm
Because it has no way of knowing what dependencies you actually have on your system unless it uses package config in
hmm
which Pac-Man doesn't rely on at
hmm
all.
hmm One thing you've mentioned before is you have done a bunch of LFS installs. How many would you say at this point?
Yeah, I said about like over 10.
Okay. Do you manually go through everything at this point, or do you have scripts set up to automate parts of it?
All of the attempts have been manual
Okay.
by hand.
How long
And
does it
if I had to
take
give
you?
like a total
Oh, go on, yes.
with like Steam and Wine, it takes about like 40 hours. 35 to get like just basic stuff, but if you want like Firefox and stuff like that,
Right.
then it takes 40 hours.
Uh-huh.
If you're just installing, if I just install LFS, it only takes 6 hours.
Mm-hmm.
But if I go through BLFS, it ends up being about 35 hours to 40 hours.
Over how long would that usually take you? Like, if you are going through an LFS install, like, how much time per day are you spending on it?
Um, let's see. Well, I I did mention that I have autism, and so I just spend whatever time I'm doing like really dedicated to the craft, you know. I
Mm-hmm.
spend a lot of hours in one single session not eating or drinking at all. So
Right.
I just spend like about like 8 hours every day just going at it.
I thought you were gonna say you just spend 36 hours and get it done. Just one go. Don't
I
sleep.
I, I need sleep, you know.
You don't need sleep. You can sleep is for the weak.
I can just compile my kernel. I could spend whatever time sleeping to compile software.
That's true. Just get a slower CPU so you can sleep longer.
True. I have thought about getting like a really old crappy old computer that has like an i3 86 CPU and just like try and compile LFS just using that
I've had a guy on this
because there's
show.
like
Go on. We have a giant delay. I don't know why the delay is so massive
I
today.
probably because I'm using LFS.
Just blame LFS.
That's what some of my friends do. It's just like, oh, it's because you're using Linux or LFS, and I'm like, no, that's not how it works. But I lost my train of thought.
Um. Yeah, I'm not sure. Oh, you're talking about getting a i3 or i3 something. Your slow system, old system.
Yeah, there's just yeah, it's just like very simplistic. I used to compile LFS on in a spinning disk,
Mm-hmm.
and it's there's like a simplistic crappiness to it
Mm-hmm.
that's charming because of how slow it boots, and it feels like you're just back in the old days, and that's the feeling I want to achieve with getting like an i3 86.
Mm-hmm. So I've had someone on this show
If
who did Gen 2 on a PS2. Um, it took a
oh, that's
while
fun.
to do anything, like a long while to do anything. But it can be done. Linux was officially
It
supported on
can.
the
It's just
PS2.
why.
There were like
Yeah, the question is just why.
um for the memes. Yeah, just pretty much
Yeah,
it.
that sounds about right.
There's no good reason to do it.
um, you just kind of do it.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
think that's a reason. That's the main reason why a lot of installations happen. I guess it's just you do it just for the sake of it,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
and it's fun. And part of LFS is just not having a system that you can work on, but just for the fun of installing it.
Mm-hmm.
It's just a fun process to do for me.
Yeah,
And so sometimes it can be treated as a pastime.
I, I'm glad that you have fun with it because I didn't. I was not having fun. You know, maybe if I was doing it myself, but because I was doing it on stream and I was like reading chat as well while I was doing it. I was drinking and it was taking so long to do stuff and I probably could have got it done, but I just didn't want to look at that thing again. And I hadn't even done
Yeah,
BLFS yet.
I did notice when watching all the streams that there was like no final stream as it were,
Mhm.
like get finally actually booting up in your system and seeing if it works or if you get a kernel panic. And I was like, where'd it go? And so I just kind of assumed that you didn't actually finish the LFS installation, but now I guess I have that confirmation.
Yeah, I honestly going through LFS, it made me hate streaming. I just didn't want to stream anymore.
Really?
It was like it was
Was it
fun at the start, but after like what 10
was
episodes of the same thing over and over again, just yeah.
so it wasn't because of the chat, but it was just because you hated streaming the same thing over and over again.
That honestly was a big part of it. Like just run it was just running commands. Okay, we wait a couple of seconds. Okay, run a command. Okay, run a command. Okay, again. Oh, this one takes a couple of
That's
minutes.
that's the thing That's the thing with LFS and BLFS is because like you can't just press like make and then wait like 20 minutes and that's most of the compile time. The a big part of the time is spent actually typing and moving around and stuff like that rather than actually compiling.
Hmm.
And so a lot of the time is just spent doing that instead of actually just waiting for the thing to compile.
Hmm. Yeah, a lot of the
And so I can imagine it being frustrating.
yeah. Like as I said before, a lot of the things you will compile are obviously really, really small. So you can't just wait because it's not gonna take that long to compile. It's gonna take maybe at most like, a couple of seconds for some of them. Like when you're compiling like grep or gzip or make or patch, like all of these things, they are very, very quick compiles. Or like a lot of the little libraries and
Yeah.
stuff, like all of this stuff, like what's another good example? Check or like Vim. Even Vim doesn't take that long. Groff.
Yeah, even Vim, yeah, it doesn't take that long at all.
I should go back and actually go through LFS and actually get it done, but maybe one
It's
day.
again, again, I am self-aware and realize that it's absolutely stupid, but I do recommend giving LFS at least one shot just because of all the material that you can learn.
Mhm.
But in terms of daily driving it, don't daily drive it if unless you're like severely autistic and need something to feel that, desire of just Linux.
Right, right.
Like
Just
if you're so deep in a rabbit hole, then maybe give daily driving a shot and see how you like it. But
you've been
otherwise, don't bother.
you've been using Linux for 2 years. You just tripped and fell into the rabbit hole.
Yeah, hard.
Most people
I
again, most people are fine on like Arch or Gentoo. Like most people don't even use LFS as a daily driver. The fact that you got there so quickly is still wild to me.
I don't know how it happened. It just happened.
Mhm. So besides the
Same.
oh, go on.
Oh no, you continue.
I was gonna say, besides the whole like glibc stuff, and that being a problem anytime there's an issue there, what sort of major issues have you had with your system? Whether it be issues regarding dealing with package upgrades or things that you had to fix along the way, like what are some of the challenges you've had?
Honestly, not at all. The main issues were just trying to figure out how to actually get Steam working.
Hmm.
I think that's where my major pitfalls were. I mean, there was trying to get Network Manager to actually compile, but there's just so many dependencies that Network Manager requires, and I
Hmm.
didn't even know what dependencies those were, unless you just get the dependency, then go ahead and try and configure again,
Hmm.
and it doesn't work, so you get that dependency, try it again. And the process was so numbing after like 30 dependencies that I just completely gave up on trying Network Manager.
Okay,
But other than that, I just didn't, you know, I didn't have much issues.
I'm seeing the dependency list. I see the issue.
Oh, you're
Uh,
looking at the Arch. You're looking at the Arch one.
no, I'm looking at BLFS.
It says like recommended and required, but
Yeah.
that's a complete fabrication. That's a lie.
Yeah.
Don't
Okay.
trust it. It's not right. At least in my experience, it's not right. I haven't
Okay.
made an issue on the mailing list yet because I still don't know what's needed, and I don't want to deal with it.
So
I don't think anyone does.
for anyone just listening, it says required libndp, and that's the only required, which does not sound right to me
Bullcrap.
at all.
There's no way.
There is
Yeah,
one
there's no
required
way.
package. Yeah. For
Let
recommend.
me let me yeah, let me take a look at this. There's no way. There's no way at all. Oh my god.
So for
This is a
recommended,
big fat lie.
yeah, that makes sense to me. For recommended, it says curl DHCPCD, glib. Wait, what? Why is that? Whatever. Okay, whatever. Okay, yeah, I'm seeing the problem. Uh,
It's it's just gobjacked introspection.
IP tables, libpsl, newt, NSS, polkit, PyGObject, elognd, vala, WPA supplicant, and then optional. The optional stuff I can imagine. There's some fireable stuff in here. Yeah, I can imagine a lot of the optional stuff actually being the GTK doc, definitely optional.
Actually optional.
Yeah, these seem optional. What does Arch say?
Even after don't look at the Arch one.
What does
It is a
Gentoo
nightmare.
say?
Trust me.
Let's go to Gentoo.
Actually, yeah, let's
Package.
see.
Package information. Okay.
Let's see.
Dependencies. Here we go. Required dependency. ACCT group plug dev. glib. Yeah, why is glib optional? I'm confused.
Oh, it was required for me.
No, it was. I mean, optional on
I
the.
don't know.
On the listing on BLFS.
It's recommended.
Oh, sorry, recommended. Not yeah,
BLFS.
sorry.
Yeah.
Yeah, Gentoo has a lot of stuff listed here.
That's right. You should check out the Arch list.
I do have network management
and show it to the entire audience.
Okay.
And show it because it is a complete nightmare.
Arch network manager. Let's see the network manager package. Here we go. What do we have? It has 59 dependencies. Oh god, okay. Okay, so the actual required dependencies are audit, curl, IP route 2, Jensen, libmmglib, libndp, libnewt, libnm, libpsl, libteam, mobile broadband provider info, WPA supplicant. And then, oh my god, there are so many make dependencies here. Blues makes sense because that's Bluetooth stuff. DH client, DHCPD, DNS mask, firewall D, IP tables, IWD, modem manager, sorry, NF tables, open resolve, pack runner, polkit, PPP, and then a bunch of other make dependencies. That's not that bad.
It's a mess.
It could be worse. Okay, look, to be fair, some of the things that are listed here as dependencies are like, yes, technically, but it's going to be there anyway, like systemd. You don't really need to list systemd on Arch or Git. Like,
yeah,
there are some things you can assume are just going to be there.
And one thing that you may forget about is those dependencies also have dependencies.
This is very true.
And so you have to go down the list.
Mm-hmm.
And it becomes absolutely unbearable at some point that you just give up. Because literally there's no point. Just install something similar, like using WPA supplicant and DHCPCD.
Yeah, you really don't. If you're doing a wide system like a Ethernet, you really don't need network manager.
Yeah. No, like if we're using KDE
Mhm,
and use Wi-Fi, then yeah, it's nice to have. But
mhm,
otherwise, I just go down the route of DH and WPA supplicant
mhm.
because it's just easier to deal with.
Yeah, yeah. I can imagine. Um, on the topic of KDE, let's go to BLFS and let's check the KDE bit.
Oh my god, I
I'm sure it looked
there's a reason why I haven't dealt with that devil.
great. Introduction to so we have Introduction to KDE, KDE frameworks, KDE frameworks 5 based applications, then building KDE Plasma 5. Look, GNOME's not much better, but
The thing with KDE
mm.
is you know KF5 like KDE Framework 5 and all
Yes,
that
yes.
stuff. Like all the libraries and applications that are the result of your compilation or downloading, it's so much stuff.
Mm.
And it's mind-numbing to look at, and it's like, why even go through the process? Why can't KDE just do something in a better way?
Meaning,
That's how I look at it
what do you
anyway.
mean by that?
There's just so many libraries and applications
So
when it could just be a lot smaller.
the thing with KDE having so many libraries, they actually used to do it in another way, where they still had the libraries, but instead of them being all of these separate things, they were all one big library monolith. And back then, people complained that if they installed Dolphin, they had to pull in a 500 megabyte dependency. Because instead of it being these like 100 individual packages, it was one mega package that had everything inside of it.
Yeah, and I can understand that point of view as well. I know, what is it, X11?
Mm,
They used to, I think they used to be like one big package, but now they split up into modular things
mm.
because of how the Xorg project wanted to do things, but
Mm,
that's how it's done.
So you brought it up before, and look, I'm gonna ask, is there a world where you consider running Wayland?
I do actually.
Mm-hmm.
It's just I have to figure out everything like how I'm gonna, run Steam Wine, record with FFmpeg, or figure out what I'm gonna use to record, take screenshots,
Mm-hmm.
and stream, and stuff like that. Figure out, my working environment with STDWM, Rofi, all that stuff, and
Mm-hmm.
beyond that, I'd switch to Wayland. It's just figuring out what my environment's gonna look like is the problem.
Right, right.
Because I don't doubt that Wayland would be ready for me.
Mm-hmm.
It's just a matter of sorting out what I need.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. No, that definitely makes sense. Well, especially with being like a DWM user, it's really hard to replace DWM, especially once you have a very customized setup.
I mean, one thing that you could do is replace all the X11 libraries with the Wayland protocol and composer and stuff like that,
Mm-hmm.
and try and change all the function calls and stuff like that. It can be done,
Sure.
and I would like to do that. It's probably gonna take a while.
Just port DWM to WL roots.
Maybe. I
Look,
haven't
hey,
I haven't
I just.
gave Hyperland a shot.
Uh huh.
I might give Hyperland a shot though.
Mm-hmm.
and see how I like it, but generally I just like making my own projects
That's fair. That's
and
fair.
using them.
Okay, well that's. I guess
You're
that's pretty.
laughing.
No, that's pretty reasonable. I get that. I get that. Um, I think the biggest issue you're gonna have is look, unless the FFmpeg team does something, I think you might have to replace your capture
Switch to
solution.
something else.
Yeah.
Yeah. Or just, use a capture card.
Yeah, I did bring that up before. Just output, just run everything through a capture card. Just don't even think about it. That honestly that would be the easiest solution. Then you just genuinely don't have to
It
think about
would.
it.
Because then you don't have to worry about which display server you're using. You just, use it. The
Yep.
thing with my setup though is, um, because there's the HDMI pass through,
Hmm.
and so that HDMI goes into my monitor, and so my refresh rate gets hindered
Hmm.
because HDMI is HDMI, and I hate HDMI. I much prefer DisplayPort, so I'm gonna have to figure that out.
Yeah, HDMI is great, especially with the recent. I don't know if you saw this, the recent
Oh,
stuff
the
with
HDMI
the
form.
yeah, the HDMI forum being the HDMI forum.
Yeah, that was fun.
Yeah, it
It
was.
made me realize the reason why I love DisplayPort.
I really wish, honestly, like the only reason why I even care a little bit about HDMI is because of game consoles. If game consoles were using DisplayPort, I would never need to think about HDMI or even just offered it as like a secondary option. That would be so nice. And like the problem with game consoles only doing HDMI is every capture card is an HDMI capture card. It is so difficult to find a DisplayPort capture card. They are there's some of them do exist, but they're not commodity hardware like the HDMI stuff are.
Yeah, 100%.
The only reason I've been looking into stuff because I'm getting I wanted to set up my capture PC at some point, so I need to get another capture card and replace a couple of things in my chain and deal with stuff, but I really wish I could just do DisplayPort. That would make it so much easier. But no.
Yeah, I love DisplayPort because every time I try using HDMI and
Mm.
just trying to use it for my monitor, it always locked my refresh rate down a peg from what it should be.
Hmm.
I'm like, why the hell is this happening? Even VGA works better. And it's like, why does VGA work better than freaking HDMI, which is more modern than VGA? And it just made me really upset, and so I just rage quit and switched to DisplayPort, and it changed my life forever.
VGA is one of those things which are just never gonna like disappear. It's such an important legacy connector. There are so many systems that still only use VGA. I have seen so many situations where a projector only has a VGA output. It's like in some cases you'll see projectors that are VGA HDMI because VGA it had such a foothold in industry use, like much like floppy disk, right? Where even though most people have moved on, there's still giant industries that are still relying on floppy disk today and are not going to move until they absolutely have to.
You would think that VGA cables and stuff like that would be harder to come by now that it's an old standard,
Mm-hmm.
but they're surprisingly very easy and cheap to get.
Mm-hmm.
And but graphics cards are slowly moving away from using VGA. My new graphics card doesn't have a VGA port, but the my old 1050 Ti
Mhm.
had a VGA port, and I appreciated it because VGA is actually surprisingly good. It can go up to 144 hertz,
I'm sorry, what?
which is good for the gamers around the world.
Wait, VGA, what?
Or is that 120 hertz?
I can do
Yeah,
120? What?
yeah, it can go up to 120 hertz.
144, yeah. What?
Yeah, 144 hertz.
What resolution was that
It's
at?
it's better than HDMI. For me it was 1080p. 1080p 144 hertz.
What? Wait,
It
hold.
was better. It was better than HDMI. I'm not kidding.
I
It makes me so upset.
I am just learning this. Wait, I'm seeing some people say. So I'm seeing some people say it can do it, and some people say it can't do it. I'm so
For me it could.
I'm so confused. I'm so confused. Okay.
Just know that VGA can actually be better than HDMI. It made me so upset when I figured that out.
Well,
Because I don't
certainly
know
the
what
older
my
standards.
HDMI cable. Because I can't remember what my HDMI setup was capped at,
Mhm.
but VGA could go higher than my HDMI setup, and I was so infuriated. And then DisplayPort can go even higher than VGA. So the tier list is literally HDMI, VGA, and DisplayPort in my use case.
Okay, I did not know this. I was not aware of this capability whatsoever. Like the last time I had a VGA, or last time I used VGA, I don't even know. Like I used DVI for a long time. I don't know the last time I even used like VGA on one of my own systems. Probably like the first computer I had. That's
Wait.
probably the last time. Jesus.
Oh, wait, hold on.
Oh. Hmm.
Hold on.
Yes.
Oh, wait, no, I was confusing VGA with DVI.
That would
Never
make
mind.
more sense. Okay.
It's actually, yeah, oh, yeah. I was talking about, DVI, not VGA.
Ah, yes, yes, yes. Okay, this
Why did
makes
I think
sense.
it was VGA?
Um,
Yeah, never mind.
Ignore the last 10 minutes. It's fine. Don't. Didn't happen.
It's complete. I just gaslight the entire audience here.
Oh, you're gonna get comments about that. I guarantee it. Yeah, dual-link DVI. So yeah, dual-link DVI-D can do 1080p 144 hertz. Huh.
Yeah, but it
Huh.
was still better than HDMI.
Okay. I, even that, I didn't realize that DVI-D could do that high. That I was not aware of. Because that would have been
Well,
like,
you learn something every day. Will it be useful? I'm not sure.
because that would have been much higher than like first gen HDMI, without a doubt. Huh. Because it's not until like what?
Absolutely.
It's probably not until like 1.4 that HDMI surpassed that. Then it's been a while since it surpassed it for sure, but because like nowadays with modern HDMI, you know, massively, massively outperforms it. But for the time, I can definitely see the value in going down that route instead. Because remember that was one of the
So
early
when
selling points of DisplayPort as well. It was like much fast, like much higher specs than
Yeah.
HDMI.
So does HDMI upgrade when depending on the device output, like the graphics card, or is it just the cable? that gets upgraded and some of the software
Well, the
on your
device needs
system.
to be able to output like at the highest standards.
Ah, I see.
So you would need like a
So yeah,
go on.
then the 1050 Ti wouldn't be able to have that high standard. It's
No,
just
no, no.
at a low standard. So that's why the HDMI was it was not doing things the way that I wanted to.
Yeah, the 1050 Ti. Let's see, what year was that from? That released in. Someone give me a review. What year did PC Gamer review it? PC Gamer, why is there not a goddamn year on your
Um,
review? Okay, what?
October 25th, 2016.
That's a bit of an old card at this
So yeah, it
point.
was in 2016. But the
So,
fact that 2016 is old is still surprising to me.
yeah,
In the tech landscape, though, it makes sense.
well, I think about like when I graduated high school, and I don't like thinking about that because that was going on 9 years ago. Jesus Christ.
Yeah, I graduated high school like last year, and I even I feel old. Yeah,
No,
all my friends just call me like a baby because I'm so young compared to them, and it's like, what? I'm getting mixed signals here.
don't worry, it only gets worse. There will never be a point where it gets better.
Oh, I believe you.
I have like I've looked at my audience graph, and I think the majority of my audience is like late 20s, early 30s. But I actually have like a surprisingly high number of people in my audience that are like 55 plus. And it's always interesting when I do these like history videos, because I'll get people in my comments who are like, yeah, I'll talk about something that was happening in like 1991, and they're like, oh yeah, I was like doing this Unix stuff back then. Like, right, I always forget my demographic is quite wide.
Yeah, I noticed this weird like I don't know, like you hear about like the software developers are just like chill, want a beer, and but it's so weird hearing that from software developers and big Linux enthusiasts,
Mm-hmm.
because I thought they'd be the ones that wouldn't be so down to earth and just be down for like a brewski.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think.
But as it turns out, a lot of them are just old fashioned drinking beer, just chilling out. They just want to develop their software and just have a good rest of their day.
Yeah, exactly. Just like too many important things in life to worry about to argue about nonsense. Just like, hey, let's just chill. I got software to write. Let's write some software and compile compile. Like, there's this idea where like when software genuinely did take a long time to compile, like if you're compiling the kernel, it would take a couple of hours. There are some people out there who were not a fan of upgrading like CPU platforms because it meant they had less time to just take a break. Like there's always like fun people
Yeah,
you can, fun stories you can talk about with people who've been around in this space for a very long time.
yeah. It's such a shame that they're not talking about the important things about Linux, like talking about the supply chain that exists.
Mm. The so-called
And
supply
mentioning the
chain.
XE drama for the so-called supply chain, mentioning XE 100 times over.
Mm-hmm.
That
Yeah,
was a fun situation, and that that happened there.
yeah. The XZ case was What happened on was there like any discussion on like the LFS side about that? I assume there's no, like, LFS does not recommend installing the patches that cause an issue with XZ.
So when the first bit of news came out, like about 2 hours after I guess 2 hours after it like really started to pop off,
Mm.
um, they were discussing like, hey, downgrade to this version, but there was a lot of paranoia in the mailing list, like, no, we need to downgrade to an even older version, and it's like, oh, what about the XE vulnerability trailing down to other packages on your system, like R or GCC, and there was just a bunch of paranoia, and then there was a bunch of arguments, political arguments, and creating like standards and stuff like that, and eventually led to an editor. I don't know if he stepped away from the the team or if he just stepped away from the email thread, because it legitimately got very heated
Mm-hmm.
and very argumentative.
Mm.
And it's just like, holy crap, over just some XC situation, just downgrade, figure that out. Then when you figure it out, then upgrade again. It's not that big of a deal.
Yeah.
It doesn't need all this political argument. I mean, things are gonna be as they've always have.
Mm.
Nothing will change because with the open source ecosystem, nothing really can change as of now. Because everything
Yeah.
just wants to do their own thing. They just want to develop their own projects, and
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
sometimes they just don't have the energy to switch over to the next big thing, like um security standards. There was like one project or two projects that you talked about that I don't know, but um if I went like developing my game engine, if I had to focus on like the strict security
Mm-hmm.
issues and whatnot, then I think I'd just stop developing entirely.
Right. Right. I can certainly get
Just
that
because
taking away from it.
it's like I just want to develop code. I don't want to focus on all
Mm-hmm.
this security nonsense.
Yep.
Just use a system that's less easy to exploit. Like
Mm-hmm.
stop using the configure system and move over to CMake, where the configuration file is literally in the Git repo
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
instead of in release tarballs, and that way it's a lot easier to track vulnerabilities. But other than that, I just want to develop my code.
Right. Right. No, I get that. XZ, like the XZ case was like, it was one of those weird cases where it could have been so much worse. Like the fact that it got caught early, the fact that like some dude, he was running SSH and it ran like half a second slower, and that was what set him off. Like, okay, let's test, see what's going on here. Why is it running slower? Like the fact that someone thought that that was such an important case, they had to go and test it. Like, it could have been missed
and
so
and from a
easily.
dude working at Microsoft, no less. Somehow the guy that works at the company of what people would call our enemy operating system
Mm-hmm.
helped our operating system.
Mm-hmm.
It's incredibly ironic, but honestly a tale of just like software developers helping other software developers and just making sure
Yeah.
everyone is okay.
Yeah.
That's the thing that really matters most.
I think a lot of people get too caught up in the whole, it like the same with like Red Hat and all this. Like Red Hat, Meta, Face, like if you look at like the Linux kernel, for example, you have people from Amazon, Intel, Nvidia, Red Hat, you have Meta people, you have all of these different people, And I think a lot of people get too caught up in the like corporate management, like overarching structure, and forget about the fact that most of the engineers are just engineers. They are at these companies because they pay well. But if there was especially the people that are working on the kernel, if there was a company they could work at that was fully in support of open source that also paid really well, they would likely work there. It's just, Meta gives you a lot of money, so they happen to be at Meta.
Yeah. Besides that, companies can do really crappy things in the Red Hat CentOS stream. Um, that was kind of bad. But
Mm.
besides that, it's just why care about these companies contributing to a free and open source project as
Mm-hmm.
long as the code is completely fine. If there's binaries in a kernel project, then that's an issue to possibly, worry about because who knows what's actually in those binaries. But
Mm-hmm.
besides that, then it's not really an issue to worry about. It's just companies wanting to support a project because the project helps them.
Yeah, yeah.
So it's just a win-win for everyone.
And I've said this a couple of times in previous shows, but I think it's always important to separate the engineers. Separate the engineers from the companies. Like, I've spoken to a bunch of people from Red Hat, and even like after the whole Red Hat doing the whole Red Hat thing, and they're great people. I've like some of them I've spoken to very much disagree with the stance that Red Hat has taken over the past couple of years, but they feel that overall Red Hat is a productive force, and that's pretty much why they stay there. But all of these people are just like they're not the corporate leadership. The corporate leadership is the corporate leadership. Like the corporate leadership in most places is corporate leadership. You can look at any company, whether it's in this space or any other space, and the people doing the groundwork are very, very different than the people leading the company.
Yeah, and the way that I think about it is actually not with, Linux or free and open source development, but like Nintendo. I talked about just like emulating like Nintendo 64 games, but I like Nintendo as a company can do really crappy things, but the
That's
developers
one
that
way to put
develop,
it.
you know, the actual games are really cool people who make really good products.
Mm.
But it's just the company that really besmirches everyone's names.
Yeah.
And that's kind of the same thing with the development world and tech industry.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, Nintendo is very, very litigious. They do not like you touching anything that they own. They're very much like Disney in that way. Like they
We're probably gonna get Nintendo probably just because we mentioned their name.
well, hey, you know, bring it
It,
on.
it was a nice run while we had it.
That's true. We've not emulated any video games. We do not support emulation. Emulation is bad unless Nintendo sells a device that uses an open source emulator. And that's okay then.
Yuzu was that was a situation, but to be fair, the developers kind of had it coming because they had a Patreon, and
Yeah.
apparently they were discussing piracy,
Mm-hmm.
so the developers kind of had it coming.
Yeah, there's a reason why a lot of projects that mess around with things like this, like Asahi Linux, for example, they are very terrified of anyone who has ever been within 100 miles of an Apple building. They do not want anything to do with you. Do not come anywhere near the code base. Do not suggest fixes for anything. They don't even want to know that you are a real person. And the reason why they're like that is because They don't want any chance that Apple comes after them for having any possibility of code that shouldn't be publicly available. And in like a similar vein with Yuzu, like Nintendo is very litigious. They will come after you for messing with their IP in any little way. And if it wasn't going to be for the Patreon and not stopping people talking about piracy, it would have been something else. At some point, they would have found a reason to shut this project down and, by extension, also Citra. But that just happened to be, at the time, the simplest way to do so.
Yeah, and there was a lawyer that kind of suggested is that the end of emulation might be near, or there's gonna be like an Avengers Endgame with emulation, because Nintendo kind of has been more, uptight, shoulder squared
Yeah.
with emulation, and so he basically said, "Hey, they're drawing a line right here. Don't cross it. Otherwise, things will probably get ugly, and we're gonna have a battlefield."
Yeah. Yeah.
And so it's something that's probably gonna happen sometime soon. It's just a matter of when.
I don't know how we got to this topic.
Oh, because I was talking about how, like, treating developers fairly despite what the company thinks
Right.
and does things.
Right, that happened, didn't it?
Yeah, it did.
We are coming up on the 2-hour mark. So, I guess we probably should start wrapping it up. This was fun. I enjoyed this.
Sure. I quite enjoyed it too. You got to hear this perspective of a Linux from Scratch user that you're kind of completely baffled by. That's my intent.
Okay, well, I'm glad you had your intent fulfilled then.
Nah, I just kind of do my own thing, but sometimes
That's fair.
surprises people. And that's completely fine.
So, do you have anything that you want to direct people to, or do you just want to send people towards LFS, or what do you want to mention?
Um, so I am a YouTuber, and so I do plan on creating like a guide to install Steam and Wine on LFS and stuff like that, but I don't know how long that's gonna take. I'm writing a book right now, but I don't know when it's gonna be finished. But when I'm finished, I'll just post on my channel. But otherwise, if you want to follow LFS or BLFS, just go to the sites directly. They'll teach you how to do stuff.
Fair enough. Fair enough.
But if you have any trouble, just go to YouTube. There might be some issues regarding EFI and the boot directory and Grub, but otherwise you'll probably be fine.
I see you were streaming Ty the Tasmanian Tiger.
Yes, multiple times because of FFmpeg.
I am a very big fan
And
of
so
this
how
game. This is a game that I grew up
I'm
playing a
not
lot.
surprised. I grew up with it too. It's a very good game.
I only ever played the first one. Sorry, I only ever had the first one. I'd played Night of the Quinken at one of my friends' houses, but I never got to finish that. I need to get around to finishing the trilogy at some point. One day.
I always wanted to play the other games until I saw like footage of it. Then I'm like, oh god, this is like mid 2000s average platformer guns and stuff like that. I'm like, this does not look fun at all.
I
But
get
like
it.
the first game, it's just like it's chill. It's what it was meant to be.
No, I get that. I get that.
You know.
Yeah. Is there anything else you want to mention, or is it just the channel and LFS?
That's it.
Awesome. As for me, the main channel is Brody Robertson. I do Linux videos there 6-ish days a week. I've got the gaming channel that is Brody on Games. By the time this comes out, I will be done with both the games I was playing. So I don't know what I'm going to be playing. I still have not decided. I'll have to do that after the stream I have after I wake up. Maybe it'll be Sekiro. I don't know. I keep saying it's probably going to be Sekiro. Maybe I play Sekiro. I don't know. And if you're listening to the audio version of this, you can find the video version on YouTube at Tech Over Tea. If you're watching the video, you can find the audio on basically any audio podcast platform. There's an RSS feed. Grab that if you like RSS feeds. I'll give you the final word. What do you want to say? How do you want to end us off?
Don't go too far down the rabbit hole, otherwise you'll never come out from it again.
Fair enough.
Save yourself.
See you guys later.
See ya.